All right. I think we are ready to go. All right, Brian, good to see you.
You too, Noel. Thank
Let
you.
me change to speaker view here. So, Brian, what I originally intended to do with this was bring people on and sort of wind them up and let them go. And I have enjoyed our interactions and our communications over the months that I wanted to change the setting of on air and make it more conversational, conversational slash interview slash Q&A with anything that anyone has coming up. So I figured you'd be the perfect person to start the new format with and try it out. Um, and if you're okay with that, then we'll go ahead and get started.
Absolutely okay with that. I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, perfect. So I'll read your bio real quick, and then I've got a couple questions to start, and then I got a couple sort of, well, we'll just go from there. I'm not going to tell everybody everything that's going to happen.
Okay.
All right, so my guest today is Brian Tom O'Connor. Brian is the author of Awareness Games, Playing with Your Mind to Create Joy. Is a formerly depressed guy who stumbled onto the source of joy and happiness and the background of all experience. If someone has imperfect and flawed as he is, can find it, so can you. Brian is also the co-host with Jonathan Robinson of the Awareness Explorers podcast. His new book, Awareness Adventures: Discovering Your True Nature, is coming out in 2021. Brian, so good to see you. I always enjoy, like I said, I always enjoy our interactions, and I just get a general sense of joy when we see each other. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I enjoy our interactions too. So I was so looking forward to connecting again today.
Excellent. So I do have a question, and this is kind of going back a ways, but I saw uh, you posted on your blog this idea of enlightenment versus happiness. I'd like to have you talk about that a little bit more. And it seems that there is, when there is seeking going on, we'll call that an interest in enlightenment, non-duality, whatever it is that you want to call it. A lot of times it's this idea that we are seeking happiness, or that we're trying to be not unhappy in that way. Can you speak to that a little bit more in terms of what you were talking about there? And this was maybe 5 years ago, I think, when you posted this. So how that's evolved.
Sure. That's I think a great topic. I mean, I started out because I was depressed and I didn't want to be. Enlightenment wasn't the original goal. The original goal was, how do I change from being depressed to being basically a happy person? But when I saw, and actually I stumbled upon this in a book about codependency of all places, that said, if you really want to be psychologically healthy, you need to develop a spiritual side. So I started, going on Google and seeing what that meant, and down a bunch of false starts and dead ends. But when I discovered, I guess you would call it non-dual spirituality, um, and self-inquiry in particular, looking at the who I truly am, looking out these eyes, then something really clicked for me. And as I started practicing that, I started getting happier and happier. And I realized that this was a happiness that was for no reason. It was not connected to the events in life. It was
Mm,
just happiness. And when I, so I don't think there's anything wrong with the idea of enlightenment. And as a starting point, searching for enlightenment. But at one point, I realized that, wait, enlightenment, by definition, is something that's going to happen at some point in the future.
right,
And
right.
it's just not, that's not where happiness is. Happiness is now and can only be now. And the thing that veils it, it's our natural state. I think I discovered it's it's our natural state, and all the unhappiness is just layers on top of it. And that natural true happiness is veiled by memories and thoughts about the future and desires and imaginations. I mean, memories and thoughts about the past and desires and imaginations about the future.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It becomes it almost, not to use the word phases or levels or anything, but there is this aspect of I think that everyone's seeking happiness in stuff and events and things like that, and then you sort of, your eyes open to this other way of looking at things, and all of a sudden it ends up being, well, oh, okay, well, so I don't need that stuff to be happy, but now what I need is enlightenment.
Right.
Now I need to, awaken in that way. And so you trade all that other stuff, all those other goodies for this big goodie.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the seeking continues, and in some cases the suffering continues. But yeah, that well stated. I love that description.
But there's another, the way that my thinking about that has evolved a little bit since that blog is I had this analogy. I call it the infinitely refillable water bottle. Like, we're walking around with this water bottle that's infinitely refillable, and it is happiness and joy itself. When I'm feeling anxiety or feeling a little low or anger or whatever, you take a drink of that, meaning you turn your attention from the content of awareness to awareness itself, which is totally okay with everything, and therefore it's unconditional love, and therefore it's happiness. But the thing is, when you have this, you know it's there. You're cool with it. If you want to go about your day and you actually have to use your mind to figure out when to leave to catch a plane or whatever, you do that, and you stop worrying because you trust that it's there. You just take a drink of this awareness, infinitely refillable water bottle, and you trust it. But you don't have to walk around 24/7 with the bottle stuck in your mouth.
Right. Yeah, that's perfect. That makes perfect sense. And in some cases, that people will call that oscillation, or they'll say, "Oh, I had it, and then I missed it." And it's like, no, you didn't. You didn't have something and lose something. It's there the whole time. It's more of
Yeah.
ends up being a recognition.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you sort of realize it's there all the time. Oh, and the other thing is, we think that we have to allow everything to be as it is. And of course, that's one of the best practices, allowing, just for now, everything to be as it is. But our mind and our personality and our ego sometimes is really totally not okay with stuff. And so it's finding that within us, which is already okay, that we can just know. It's just waiting to be noticed, waiting for us to pull aside those two curtains, past, future, and see it's okay, and it's loving, and it's awareness, and it's who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to,
Well,
it's not a state that you're not like, I'm going to arrive in this at this point in the future.
right. Yeah, beautifully stated. I love that. And so in that, and I know you have a book coming up, and I want to ask about that in a second. But in terms of awareness games, there are probably some that are watching and listening that are familiar. But tell us a little bit about the genesis of that. And I know you talk about it all the time, but I'd love to hear.
I don't mind.
Okay, perfect. The genesis of that, and the purpose, I guess, if you will, of what those do, how they came to you, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I was not the type of person who was disciplined enough to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and meditate for an hour or two. And I certainly enjoy meditation. I like it, and it's marvelous. But I started despairing that, oh my gosh, if I have to be this type of person and I have to go on a certain number of retreats, month-long retreats, and I have to do this, I'm never gonna. It's never gonna happen for me. And I said, but wait a minute. I'm gonna find my own way.
Mm.
And I realized that when I was little, I used to lie in bed and think, what if there was nothing? I mean, I'm 10 years old or something like that, and I would just keep thinking, what if there was nothing? Until, obviously, if there was nothing, I wouldn't be able to experience nothing, and I would get this feeling I could not describe. It was kind of a weird but fun feeling all over me. And so I would play a game. Let's see if I can get that feeling back. by imagining there's nothing.
Mhm.
Or I would play a game with my mind and imagine a pencil standing on end on a piece of paper and see if I could visualize. And the pencil always fell down in my mind. It never stayed up. And then I would say, I'm going to imagine a pencil lying flat on the surface, and it would stand up by itself. And not realize, oh, wait a minute. I don't have total control over this mind. This is, so, and then one more, I would lie in bed with my fingers together, and I would just notice the feeling. And I would get this feeling like, instead of touching each other, they were holding like a big rod or a log that got bigger and bigger. And this was just, so these were ways to play with my mind. Plus, I was into theater, and my mom was a theater educator, and she specialized in these things called theater games that are improvisations that you do in rehearsals to flesh out the scenes that you're working on. And so all of a sudden I thought, well, wow, maybe I can make a hybrid of theater games and these games I used to play with my mind as a kid, and meditative techniques like self-inquiry, where you turn your attention, as I said before, from the content of awareness to awareness itself. And I would sit down, and all these ideas started popping into my head. Like, imagine your mind is a slippery disc. And when thoughts come in, they maybe spin around, but it's so slippery that they shoot out the other side. Or imagine you're in a stream and you're filled with fish that are thoughts about the future, and you're just trying to catch them and reel them in and put them in a basket beside you. And so just, and because I think that I'm not guru centric in that I need to devote myself to a master who tells me exactly how to do it, because sometimes it doesn't work, and what works for me might not work for somebody else. And what works for me on one day might not work another day. So I just said, what if I offer a whole bunch of them? People can try them out, see what works for them. So that's sort of the origin story.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, you started writing the book when you were 10.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically. That is awesome. So I see that some people are joining us on Zoom.
Oh, cool.
If you want to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll call on you and put you on the screen. Or you can just type it into the chat. Or if you have a question, you can type it in the chat on any of the places that we're streaming. So, and on that note, Brian, we'll go ahead and give you an opportunity. I am curious about hearing about this upcoming book that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, Awareness Games there's an intro and some tips and tricks at the end, and everything else is just a list of about 70 or so different games. And when I wrote that book, I imagined I'm walking into a bookstore and I'm opening up the perfect book for me. What would be in it? And that was, and then after it came out and people were reading it, and I started doing meetups where I would lead people through games, I realized I had learned a lot, new stuff came, but I also wanted it to be a little more structured, so that there were sections, there were certain categories, like the identity of the self, or going deep in your body, or a deep dive into your emotional life. So I structured it a little more. I added a little more essays, a little more personal stuff about my history and how these games and exercises affect me, and put in new games and longer explanations and longer guided meditations, all connected with a kind of a theme of adventure. So I call it Awareness Adventures, and structured it like almost like, an old-fashioned geographical adventurer.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, I have a question for you. So I am going to ask. I get questions, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to have you do my work. I responded to this, but it's a good one, and I think that this person will appreciate me presenting this to you. So this is about ethics. It says, in Buddhism and other religions, they preach high morals and ethics, Yet Nisargadatta Maharaj smoked cheap country cigarettes, yelled at people, and slept with whores.
I didn't know about the third one. Wow.
I didn't either. I didn't either. Um, and then it says to me, you yourself say all is well and no one can do anything and preach little on the subject. From that point of view, then all bets are off and one could lie, cheat, and steal. I can make my own intellectual arguments, but they're only that of the mind. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Why would you want to lie, cheat, and steal? So my thoughts about it are, there is such a thing as the body. I'm not one of those people that says it doesn't exist. It does. It's just not who we really are. But it does exist in the world, and when we interact with people. And I don't think that there's anything about what I think of as awareness practices that negates the idea that you should do the right thing in your life at all times. You do the right thing. What's the right thing? The right thing to me is anything that helps to decrease human suffering and increase human happiness. So to me, it's not about morals. It's not about out there are rules of right and wrong that some supreme being created. It is what is most effective in creating the kind of life I want to live. And the kind of life I want to live is one where I'm happy and where the most people possible that I come into contact with are happy. If I can help them to be so, then that's great, and vice versa. And one of the best ways to do it is just like in the instructions in the airplane where it says put on your own mask first before you put your family's on. You try to be happy yourself. And the best way I found, and that's just personal, the best way I found is through self-inquiry and awareness-based practices, is knowing yourself as universal awareness, which has as its nature love. And what happens is the more that you do that, you start to see the world that way. When you see that what's looking out through my eyes is the same as what's looking out through everyone else's eyes, then acting out of compassion and unselfishness starts to become more natural. So you're not doing it because of a moral law. You're doing it because that just seems the best way to live and be happy. So in a sense, being happy is selfish, but its effect ripples out through all others. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Noel? Do you think that's an adequate? Because it's a really good and deep question.
No, it is, and I love what you said about it. I mean, the one of the things that came up for me is that, and it's speaking of Nisargadatta Maharaj, is that people would come into him and say, well, how can we sit here effectively when the world is on fire? And he said, well, focus on yourself. Leave it up to the creator to clean up that mess, focus on yourself and everything else, and everything else will be fine. Right. And I think that ethics are just another game of the mind or the ego or whatever. It's another, labeling of good versus bad, do this, don't do that. But I like what you said is exactly perfect. Like, why would you want to lie, cheat, and steal when there is this understanding of everything all being one? And I think that another point that you made, it's not a regular topic of conversation, but it does come up with the Nothing Project, because there are beautifully so. There are so many different little flavors of this. We can say flavors of non-duality, but some people don't even like using that word. I don't care. We use whatever. It certainly helps to label it as something so that people that are searching for content like this can find it, keywords and such. But that's why we'll talk about, what is. But I too like this idea, or not idea, but this approach to this feels real. This character of Noel feels really real. Like it's been going on a while, you know, there. So,
Uh-huh.
so why, once this is understood, this instinctive knowing, why would there be any reason to then negate the real feeling that is? I feel like in some ways it's kind of it's kind of it's a fast pass that you're not using. It's a cheat code to this apparent existence to make everything fun, and you're going to deny that by walking around saying, well, Noel's not real, don't call me that anymore, not turn around when your name is called. Like,
Right.
to me it seems like the complete opposite of what might be going on here. And I say might because I don't have any idea. The mystery is the most beautiful thing ever. But to me, just so much gratitude for this, and I'll say understanding, but that implies logic, to this knowing. And and part of that is, okay, now that this is felt and known on a deeper than deep level, why not play? Why not play with it? And in that play doesn't have anything to do with taking advantage or lying or cheating or stealing. It has to do with the knowing that every next step is the best step. And it doesn't stop the mind from trying. Oh, maybe you should have ordered, maybe you should have ordered that, should have ordered chocolate versus vanilla or whatever. It's going to keep doing the things that it does. But at the same time, why not just have fun in this apparent play of life, in everything? And that includes sorrow, sadness, frustration, anger,
Yep.
joy, all of it. So yeah, that's my take on it. And there's no judgment towards the ethics that are named by specific religions. Ethics and rules and guidelines, and the Zen master's stick, I suppose, can be useful in some regards. But I feel like all of those end up having some sort of a glass ceiling associated with them, because all of those things just are at some point shown to be tricks to the mind, traps, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I'm totally with you on what you said. Seems we're on a very similar wavelength, but there's one other, I think, fine point to make to this. And I owe this to Adyashanti, but the idea to allow everything to be as it is has been very influential for me and very important. But the way I use it isn't global. It's not now to eternity. It's in this next 5 minutes or this meditation session. Right now, can I allow everything to be as it is? That's what that's about. That's not about whether I should do anything in the world that is moral or ethical. It's about, can I right now, especially your emotions, can I allow my emotional state to be exactly as it is right now? And can I allow myself and everyone else in the world to be as it is just for now? Then the more often you do that, and the more often you connect to that loving presence that it evokes, then later on, if you need to go on a protest march, you do it. If you need, and do we have time if I go on one more little thing about this subject?
Are you kidding me? We don't have any timeline at all. Just keep talking. This is great.
It's like, my favorite analogy is you got a couple, I can't remember now. We'll see whether there's 2 guys or 3 guys in my analogy here, but walking along a riverbank and there's a child drowning in the river. One guy says, it is God's will that that child is drowning. Who am I to do anything about it? The second guy says, oh my God, there's this child drowning in the river. Who are his parents? Why didn't they put up guardrails? This shouldn't be. This is awful. And besides, I'm wearing a very expensive suit I just bought. The third guy says, true, I'm wearing an expensive suit. True, it's God's will that that child is and you can say the universe's will if you're non-theistic. But it is also God or the universe's will that that child fell in a river next to an able-bodied adult who can swim. So you jump in and you save the child.
Great.
So one,
Yeah.
you're like, this shouldn't be, and you're resisting reality. And one, you're resolving yourself of all possibility of action. And the other, you're simply doing what's called for in the moment and accepting it.
I love it. And that there's though that is so perfectly stated, because it explains different viewpoints and some of the different resistance points, I guess, if you will, about people looking at certain things. Well, I can't submit to this. I won't do anything anymore. I'll just sit around, a nihilism or whatever it is.
But that's a form of resistance to what is as well. Because what is what you're called upon to do in life. That's part of what is.
Totally. And that includes the guy that says it's God's will, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, it makes sense with 3 in the story for sure.
Yeah, right. I always forget whether there's 3 in the story, but yeah, once I start telling it, I remember it.
Yeah, exactly. So Emerson, I'll just say, if you're, I have Slack open. I'm kind of looking down at it. If you want to copy and paste any messages from chat, we can jump in there. And I see more people joining us on Zoom here.
No worries.
Okay, perfect. One second, let me turn this back to. Okay. Hang on one second, Brian. What did I do? Okay, we got a question coming in here from Anita. I need to unpin you for a sec. Actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and ask it, and then Brian, you can answer, and I'll figure out how to unpin you in a second. Anita asks, how do you stay open to a man that is not honest, or a woman, a person that is not honest?
Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. One is make sure that while you're talking to that person, you're also connected to the field of awareness in which your conversation is taking place. That helps you stay open. Like, I used to have conversations with people, and this is whether they're honest or not. And sometimes my mind would drift as they're talking. And I found that if I just listen from the space of awareness, I pay attention better, and I'm more open emotionally to that person. The other thing is, why should they be honest? Where's the rule that everyone else should behave in a certain way? Your idea that they are dishonest and that they shouldn't be might be resistance to what's going on. It doesn't mean you need to be walked over if they're, it doesn't mean you need to let people abuse you. If their dishonesty is deceitful and harmful to you, there's no reason to call them on it. There's no reason not to call them on it. You must, you say something, but you also know that people generally are doing the best that they can. And when people are dishonest, they're doing it usually out of fear and vulnerability. And so maybe you can think, well, wow, what is that person vulnerable about? What is that person afraid of? Or connect with your own vulnerability. Why am I afraid that this person is being dishonest? Am I afraid that they're going to harm me? So these are general, because you really have to take it situation by situation, whether their dishonesty is aggressive and harmful to you, or just simply harmful to themselves and you're seeing through them. But be honest in a kind way and be emotionally open. Don't be resisting how you feel about it.
Thank you for that answer. I was also going to add, what's to say that you need to be open or sit there and even have that person in your life anymore.
Yeah, there's that too.
Plants will naturally grow away from a fire, but to the sun. So there is that. But I love that. I love that response. this is not about being walked over. It's not about accepting punishment in all forms. It's not about not standing up for oneself when, or removing oneself from a situation, especially when it comes to verbal or physical abuse. And yet sometimes the decision is made to move away from that. And sometimes it's made to stick around for a little bit longer. But it's not, in many ways, this is sort of tie that has this tie to that nihilism, like not caring and not doing anything, like, oh, well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to sit here and let this person continue doing that. But your answer of sitting with awareness and in some cases looking at a mirror, looking back and turning it back on yourself. I love that.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Anita. And I love your snowflake image that you have on the screen.
Yeah, very good. So Brian, you mentioned, I wanted to ask you about, you were doing in-person meetups and now you're doing more of those, you're doing those on Zoom. Is that right?
Yep.
I know people ask you this all the time, but I just like it. I like hearing you talk about awareness games. Can you tell us what your favorite one is? Is there like a simple one that we can walk through? I know you gave some examples earlier, but
yeah, I have lots of favorites and they do change from time to time. But the one that just pops into my head now, and I invented it because as a something to do when you're having difficult emotions. And I find that that's really useful to people. I call it include. And when you have an emotion, it wants all your attention. It says, look at me, don't pay attention to anything else. And it becomes huge in your mind. And so in include, you notice the emotion. You notice how it feels in your body, because emotions are actually chemical reactions in your body. And you ask yourself, what is the field of awareness that this emotion is appearing in? And then you ask, what else is in emotion? What else is in awareness right now? Ah, there's the sound. Maybe there's birds or the heater or the hum or somebody's voice. There's my body sensations. I can feel the weight of my body against the chair or the floor. And you just ask yourself, what else is in awareness? And you include that. So there's the emotion. There's also the sounds. Include that. There's also how your body feels. Includes that. There's also whatever thoughts are running through your mind. Includes that. Whatever you can smell. All your senses and your perception. So you include more and more of what's in awareness now alongside that emotion. And the emotion gets smaller and smaller and smaller in proportion to everything else that's in awareness.
I love that. I like that word include, because you spoke, I too, there's a little clip that I think I've shared it a lot with people from Adyashanti, allow everything to be as it is. He gives a little talk on that. And I think it's great. And yet I also, in terms of looking at things, their words they're always dualistic, and they have different energies to them. And include is a good one. I think some people like surrender. They like that. They need that sort of that rattling of the cage, like surrender, to sort of shake things up. But welcoming, allowing, and I like including. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, I like a welcoming and allowing too. Surrender is more challenging because sometimes I feel like this Brian personality, can't surrender.
Yeah, there's a resistance to it. No, never surrender. Attack.
Wait a minute. I have to pretend to like something I don't like. But you notice that there's something real deep within that's already okay. Like that clear mirror that doesn't decide what to reflect. It doesn't say, I'm going to reflect this cup of coffee, but not this banana. I don't like bananas. It just reflects whatever's in front of it. And that's what awareness is like. So you notice it's already allowing and including. So you don't really have to do the work.
Right. That's great. I'm going to answer. I'm going to put something in this. We're getting multiple people asking about the Zoom link. So I'm just going to
Sure.
check out really quick.
I can do that, Noel. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, I can do that.
I did. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I saw an email coming in asking about it. Okay. All right, so I have more questions. Hang on one second. I wrote a couple of them down. Okay, so we get obviously a lot of questions in the meetings and retreats and things like that. It's funny. I feel like there's a resistance to being told what to do, and yet there's always some comfort and aspect of being told what to do.
Yep. No.
It's easier.
Yep.
And so, you know, in that regard, there are a lot of questions. Well, what do I do? How do I deepen this feeling of awareness? I call them yeah, but questions. So I know that, you know, it's the logical wall. You get to a point, you can read as many books, you can listen to as many talks, and you can get to a certain point, but logic and thinking won't get you there. And I think that's also ends up being the biggest sticking point and point of frustration for people that are just like, what is it that everyone's talking about? Like so what to do when you get to that sticking point, when you get to that I get this all logically, but I'm still not feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you have to understand, you have to realize, and maybe this is a certain amount of surrender, that knowing that logic is the wrong tool and the mind, which is the organ of separation, is the wrong tool. If all is one, the mind is not going to realize it, because the entire function of the mind is to make distinctions between things. Food, poison, safety, danger. And you have to experience it. But the tricky thing is, when we talk about awareness and we ask people to shift their attention from the content of awareness to awareness itself. And that's the simple summary of what to do. You do that as often as you can, even if it's only for short periods of time. That's the most simple way to describe it. But then when you shift your attention to awareness, the first thing that people think is they're looking for a thing, some thing called awareness. And awareness has no qualities of its own, because any quality that you can experience is experienced by awareness. So it's not a thing. So you turn your attention around to this sort of empty, blank field, and then you have to do a second turnaround where you're realizing that that's me. That's what I call I. That's what's been noticing my experience ever since I was a little kid. So you're being it. Rupert Spira has a summary phrase that I like called "be knowingly the presence of awareness." And I like to describe it as, you can't see it, you can only be it. So if you're looking for a thing, you're not going to find it. But if you can relax and just be that big I that the little me appears in, like, okay, what is that pure, clear field that all experience appears in, that knows all experience? And then instead of trying to find that and grasp it as a thing to experience, you just turn around from there and look out from there as that, identify as that, and just be it. And it's so tricky because as I speak, I realize how inadequate these words are. But I swear, if you just try it and keep doing it and keep trying for little bits at a time or longer periods or whatever, pretty soon, when you stop trying to make something happen or get rid of something that's happening now, when you get those veils of past and future out of the way and just be, you'll start to connect with it. It's like you create a little wormhole back to universal awareness, which is love and joy and allowing. Have you had any success in sort of describing, here's what you do?
That is a great question. No, because it's the same thing. As soon as words come out, like there's so much love and compassion and gratitude, and so there is this natural, I think, just interest to share and try to assist. And this character Noel is sort of is a coach cheerleader, like, you're doing great,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that ends up coming out, I think, when it's talking about. So it's almost as if as soon as anything that sounds like a prescription arises, then there's almost this need for a qualifier that it's like, well, or don't, you're gonna do this, that, or the other. But I think that I was talking earlier about flavors, flavors and different, these little subsects, if you want to even get into the labeling of it. And I think that, and this is why I think we're aligned when we talk about things. It's like there is an interest in helping to provide peace, to create. I think Rumi has this quote about about being in a prison cell and the door is open. And to me, the idea of surrender, or this metaphor of a prison cell, they have the same sort of energetic stickiness to it. So I say waiting room. You're sitting in a waiting room. You're waiting for your name to be called. Might as well make it as comfortable as possible. Find peace in whatever ways that you can. And then as you walk through the door, as your name is called, you see a sign on the door that said, "Come on in," the whole time. You're like, I could have just walked through that. What the hell? And so it ends up, and so then there ends up going back to this. Well, if I can't tell you what to do to make it, then the interest becomes what can be said or pointed to, or an attempt to share something that provides peace. And even that ends up being its own sort of funny little ruse, because I'll say the truth, which is, you can't do this wrong. You can't do anything wrong. And I know that saying that, and no matter how many times I've said it, no matter how many times I've been asked about it, I know that it does bring peace and maybe hopefully provides a deep breath for some people. But I know that there are those that hear or read that, and the mind just picks up the sharpest thing it can. And it's like, what do you mean? I can do no wrong, and wants to go down it wants to start making its list of all the things that it can do wrong, or that the body can do wrong, or that it has, the wrongdoings that have been done to this character. So no, I haven't, I can't say that I've had success, but there is always this interest in wanting to assist, in that regard. And for a while that was felt. And then I call it like a save the world phase, was, for whatever reason, felt the need to run around and tell family members that they didn't need to, friends and family members, they didn't need to worry anymore. They didn't need to take their anxiety medications. It was all, great. And that went over like whatever the opposite of, hotcakes is. But that interest still, that interest in love for the sharing of it and bringing peace persists. And it's not it's not mission based. It's not something that needs to happen. It's more of just uh, a love for a love for what is, and that ends up being a love for having conversations like this,
Yeah.
or answering questions. But I don't know anything. I don't know, there's nothing that can be expressed here to an other, in a way, that will unlock these secrets. And some might say that that's unfortunate, but I actually think that's part of the beauty of all of it. If you want to anthropomorphize awareness, the absolute, God, the universe, whatever, the infinite, why wouldn't the infinite choose an infinite number of ways to wake up to itself? I mean, why would it say, yes, that formula seems interesting. Let's repeat that, and let's make a way to show that over and over again. And again, this isn't anything disparaging towards various speakers and authors who make claims to be able to assist in this regard. I literally have no judgment of anyone doing anything. So it's like you said at the beginning, the guru aspect is not of interest, and not useful in some regards, and sometimes practices or games or meditation or whatever, or retreats or satsangs, that it can all be helpful. But that just falls under this idea of the infinite, experiencing itself as an infinite number of apparent experiences and practices and things like that. All right, so we have another quick question, and it's from Facebook. So what are your favorite interviews on Awareness Explorers? Or if you have a standout. I know you probably can't pick just one, but
No, I won't be able to pick just one, but I can pick a few standouts.
all right, let's hear them.
Well, I think that Rupert Spira was the first one, and I honestly, when he was in New York and I went and I asked him, would you do it? He said, probably not, because I get too many of these, but send it to my assistant. And he said he probably wouldn't do it. And then all of a sudden we got an email saying to be on it. So I was so happy because I admire him so much. Adyashanti has been so influential to me. And our conversation on Awareness Explorers, I just loved because he talks like a friend. I mean, it was just beautiful. And I think he's so wise and articulate. I love talking to Locke Kelly, who I've learned so much. I of the three people I know the best that we interviewed, Locke Kelly, Stuart Schwartz, and Pamela Wilson. I loved them because I studied with them. I knew them. And so they were great. And yeah, gosh, so many lovely interviews. But my secret is well, it's not going to be a secret anymore if I tell you. My favorites are just Jonathan and me gabbing away, the ones where we don't have a guest, because and I don't know whether that's ego-based or anything, maybe, but I don't really care, or whether it's just because it's freer. Um, it's just like a little more free flowing, whereas in the others we're trying to make sure that we're doing right by our guest and letting them say what they'd like to get across. And I love the guests, and they're wonderful. I'm so grateful for them. But my secret favorite is just John and me gabbing away.
Hey man, I'm gonna totally agree with you, because I saw when you guys spoke at Nothing Conference. I mean, I loved, again, same, all the people that spoke, and Pamela Wilson was on my stage, and she's just so bubbly and happy, like my face hurt. But literally when you and Jonathan were talking, and you guys did your segment, your talk, it was, I did keep muting because we were literally laughing out loud. And I don't even think you guys were trying to be funny. It was
just being ourselves.
Yeah, just being yourselves. So that makes perfect sense.
Well, you made it easy to do that. I have to say that was really joyful. The way you sort of created really positive, okay, free field for us to play in.
Good. Yeah, I hope it seems like it's continuing to be that, to be that for the people that are speaking. And Emerson, not to toot Emerson's horn, but I will, because he's awesome, is bringing on some great speakers, and is doing some great programming with the kinds of content and other people interviewing. So it's really cool. So Emerson, I posted the link on there for you. Got more people showing up.
Awesome.
Anybody else have any questions? I'll think of another one. I got another one here that I can read. Not think of one. I've got them. I just need to actually read them. I'll be on the lookout for both. Hang on a second. Okay, you ready, Brian?
Yep.
Okay, so the seeking mind believes there is an endpoint, a destination to be reached. Some even believe that awakening provides infinite bliss with no more problems or worries. When the self is realized, it is seen that what has been sought has always been. It has not and could not be anything else. When it's said to realize it is to realize there's nothing to get, that creates confusion, because there are so many books, there's so many words shared about this thing to get. So talk a little bit about that. To realize there is nothing, to realize it is to realize there's nothing to get.
Yeah, well, it really depends on what you mean by getting. I think that there's nothing to get, meaning that true, genuine happiness isn't something out there that you achieve and bring into yourself by either acquiring things, acquiring experiences, acquiring relationships, acquiring achievements. It's not something you get. It's something that's actually already here. It's your true nature. So you're not getting something new and bringing it in. You're taking stuff away. You're uncovering something. Our true nature as happiness itself, which is pure universal awareness, is already there, but it's covered up. It's veiled. It's covered up by our desires, our thoughts about the future, and our resistance to things that are happening now. I always like to tell the story that when I sit down, and the reason I have a lot of different games is because sometimes they work, sometimes they don't for me. If I sit down and do a meditation and I'm not connecting with that causeless happiness, that happiness for no reason, it's always because of one or two reasons. I'm either trying to get rid of some feeling I'm having now, or I'm trying to get some imagined state that I'd like to have. And both of those things simply veil the natural, relaxed, pure, open, clear, just joyful happiness that's our nature. So that's the way I see getting. Yes, you have to, just sitting around on the couch, maybe, drinking beer and watching TV might not get you that connection to that happiness, but it's not bringing something from outside. You do have to actually do that little shift of attention. So there's something that you do have to do as often as you can. Turn your attention to awareness and then try and be that awareness. But when you do that and you start to discover it, you realize you're not bringing something to you. You're revealing something already there.
That's beautiful. And sort of a reply to that in this other take is that there seems to be this tendency for the mind, ego, whatever, to pile on with more thoughts when this feeling of peace happens. So what to do with all those new thoughts that, you know, maybe before they were attacking like, you're not doing a good enough job, you could be doing better, why didn't you get this, you know, the regret and fear loop that happens. What to do with the new thoughts that apparently are attacking this these, if you want to call moments or elements of peace that are arising when you're fighting, when you're sitting quietly, describing the state. I'm saying state, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I'm not, and by the way, just aside, I don't care. I'm not, whatever words anybody wants to use, you know, I never like say, oh, don't use the word state or don't use the word, you know, enlightenment or whatever. So,
I'm the same way, but we got
yeah,
some non-dual purists in the group that
I know
yes,
what you mean.
I'm the same. I'm like, just talk.
Yeah, just talk. But I guess, but now that I went off on the side tangent, what was the last? Let's see. What
Well,
we were
so it
talking
was just
about?
it's
Oh
this
yeah, thought.
it's this idea of like,
The
yeah,
thoughts
just
that
the
come in and
pylon
attack.
of thoughts that start
Yeah,
attacking, yeah, that specific thing. It's like it's almost like a cancer in some ways.
I know. There's a couple good tips for that. One tip is, I think it's one of our guests, Bruce Pardo, who talked about this. I can't remember whether it was he, but he said it's like that when you look on a news show and you have that little stream of words that go across the bottom of the screen. You just sort of think, well, just think of your thoughts as just a little stream that's going across the bottom of your screen. You don't really have to put your attention there. But one of the biggest things that I realized that this was I found this such huge and helpful realization that I thought you had to quiet your thoughts. I thought you had to silence your mind. I thought that was what you had to do, and that was the goal. And when I realized, oh my God, awareness is there when my mind is busy. Awareness is there when I'm having attacking thoughts. Awareness is actually unaffected by the attacking thoughts. Awareness is actually okay with the attacking thoughts. Then it's just, and this is a Pamela Wilson expression, thank your mind for its opinion, honor it, and just sit back and notice your true nature, which is not the thoughts. Thoughts are something you have, they're not you.
Yeah, that idea that, and I don't know where it comes from, but that idea that we need to quiet the mind is that's what a sales gimmick.
Well, I mean, I know people who their mind went quiet and they'd say it's an amazing and wonderful and lovely experience. So I have no problem with that until you're spending your entire life trying to regain that experience instead of enjoying the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with either way, but here anyway, it seems to be an impossibility. So I just I love that the Pamela Wilson says that, because it was sort of patted on the head, like, oh, that's so nice, you know, that's so nice that you're trying, and you know, thank you for your attempts and your interest in staying relevant, but you're allowed to be here, but your efforts are wholly unnecessary. Okay, I have a question. Lynn Marie asks, cause and effect is very settled in us through conditioning, but hearing that's an illusion doesn't shift its seeming occurrence. Can you speak a little bit about this?
Well, I don't really know whether cause and effect is an illusion or not. I haven't really thought about whether it is or it isn't. There seems to be cause and effect in the relative world. And in my own inner world, there seems to be cause and effect in that When I turn my attention around to pure awareness, I'm flooded with uncaused happiness. To me, that seems like a cause and effect. And it seems like I came upon that. I sort of stumbled upon it by trying this and trying that and realized, oh, wait, that works. Oh, wow, that worked again today. Oh my gosh, that works anytime I try it. So I'm not against cause and effect, but I don't spend a lot of time with the philosophical question about whether cause and effect is an illusion or something that really happens in the world. Do you?
No, my typical answer is you're welcome to go ahead and pretend that it is,
Uh-huh.
because no resistance to that as a belief system, because it seems real in in the play of life, and you seem that if you do this particular thing, then this other thing happens. Um, but I just don't have any interest in I don't have any interest in philosophical debates or debates about non-duality or anything else. It's more like if someone comes, I mean, social media is so funny too, because I'll have people that I'll post something and they'll be like, this is nonsense. And I'm like, correct. What am I going to say? You know, like
Yeah, you're
there's
right.
no point to have to take a position and try to argue, um, to argue that. And yet I can see why cause and effect comes up a lot. It comes up a lot because, especially when answers are being sought, um, cause and especially if you look at things like law of attraction or visualization or
Hmm.
things like that, um, the whole base point for their existence and their reason for being is cause and effect. If
Hmm.
I visualize this thing, and I change how I think and I change how I talk, then I can get the things that I want. And to that, I always say, well, why don't you look at the source of the wanting thought?
Hmm.
Look at where the thought is coming from. I want this particular thing. I
Hmm.
desire this
Yeah.
particular thing. Um,
I
and
also think
so
it's helpful to, oh, sorry, you're in, I
no, I was
realize.
going to say, so with regards to cause and effect, there's no reason or interest to tell someone that it doesn't exist, so that you shouldn't try it, you should give up on it. It's just like, you can go ahead and you proceed, see how it goes. And you gave two perfect examples. Like, I've done this and this thing happened. And you're like, wow, there it is again. But the way you described it even had almost this non-expectation, a sense of wonder associated with, almost childlike, like, oh, I threw the ball, went down the stairs, someone picked it up, set it in front of me. I threw it down the stairs again, and there it goes. And if I keep throwing this ball down the stairs, then that big person will come and set it in front of me, and then they don't.
So it works until you don't. But yeah, but you know, I actually do enjoy philosophical questions. I sometimes think about them, free will, cause and effect, and stuff like that. But there's knowing that that's not really the tool that's going to bring about connection to my true nature or to the uncaused happiness, because the the ground of being, the what do they call it? The default position is uncaused happiness, happiness that's not related to external events. But I think when questions come up like that, a useful question to ask yourself also is, what would I get if I knew the answer to that question? Where would it get me? Would it help? I don't know the answer, but it depends on what you're trying to get. Intellectual understanding, philosophical understanding, or experience of being, of pure beingness.
Great point. I mean, it's experience has shown that every time that some sort of element of logic in the let's call it the pursuit, I'll say the pursuit of peace, because I used to think that it was pursuit of happiness. And then I realized that then I didn't have that, there were years, there weren't anxiety attacks or panic attacks, but I would have these episodes and they would strangely happen when things were going well. And that threw me for the biggest loop ever, because things were going well. And then the mind would be like, "Ah, don't get too comfortable. This can't last." And that ends up being the case. I think that ends up being that you can make that case for the mind, the ego, and its trickery, its shenanigans, which is it says, let's go get this thing. And then the thing is achieved, never really quite in the exact manner that's stated. I mean, we can trick ourselves and say it happened exactly as planned, but that's very few times that actually happens. And then that thing is achieved, and then another thought arises. Oh man, this is not the magic, existence that I thought it would be. And so then it chooses another thing. Or in a I'm trying to not use a bad word here, but in a perfect mind screw, it says, well, now that we're here, how do we keep this ruse going? That imposter syndrome element to it, where it's like, now that we have the thing that we thought would make us happy, it apparently is this happiness is apparently sustaining, but how do I keep this going? And whether it moves the goalpost in that realm, or just or it changes the rules in terms of well, I said we'd be happy when we got here, but now we can only be happy if this keeps going. It's all, in my opinion, it's the same thing. It's just changing the game because it does, not because it's mean or bad or is trying to is trying to punish. That's just how it works. The best thing I can think of in terms of an attempt to describe it is that it's really just this ongoing play for relevance. And again, this comes from personal experience. Things are going great. It would say, "Hey, we're doing great." And then sometimes it would be like, "Yeah, but we're not going to be doing great in a month if you don't keep this." I would always say, "You can go to the party, but don't have any drinks. We got work to do tomorrow."
But that's just a perfect example of all that the stuff, that one half of the curtain that's veiling it, that's thoughts about the future, either what bad is going to happen or what state you think you're going to get. The other half in the past. But something you said about goalposts made me think of a new game. When you said about moving the goalposts. Here's a game. Imagine the goalposts, and you move them as close as you possibly humanly can to exactly where you are now.
Move the goalpost towards you.
Move the goalpost towards you.
Oh, that's awesome.
As close as possible.
I love it. That's perfect. I love the awareness game on the fly.
Yeah.
So, Brian, what would you say to someone who is, again, and I love how you said, well, first maybe the first mistake is trying to use logic to figure these things out, but it is this we'll call it an ever-present poison that when we're seeking and trying to get to a place. What would you say to someone where there is a feeling, an energetic feeling, that they're getting close, or there is a glimpse, they've had something that's shown up, but then all of a sudden fear strikes? What would you tell anyone that where fear all of a sudden comes up as an apparent closeness to, I keep saying understanding, but let's just keep calling it that. I'm not going to trip over my words. We'll be here all day. The proximity to this feeling of this closeness, this energetic closeness, gets closer, but then a big fear arises. What would you say to that?
It depends on what the fear is of. A common one is the fear of losing yourself, of losing the identity of yourself, and that seems to get triggered a lot by this. But if you're talking about fear of something bad happening to you in the future, that would be a different approach. So is it like, do you think it's more like the first one?
Well, honestly, I think that probably they're all rooted in some version of the first one.
Right. Because I do know, I have heard it expressed a lot of times that people are afraid of losing themselves. Because let's say, I mean, because the separate self is basically made up of the tension and the resistance to what is, and the idea that anything should be different. And when that starts to ease and soften, that self-center starts to get more nebulous and in a particular place. It's just, instead of me experiencing this, it just becomes experiencing. And sometimes that can raise fear of losing yourself. And I guess the best advice I go out with, I don't know whether this is adequate or not, because this is a good and tough question. Imagine there's a favorite movie that you have, or a TV series, or a book, and there's a character in that book that you just really love. Or there's a famous person, a sports figure, and you follow them, or an artist, a singer that you really admire. You love that person, and you're into that person, and you follow that person. Now, let's say that person is you. Let's say your idea of yourself and your personality is someone that you like, that you don't want to go away, that you're afraid of losing. You don't have to lose it. It doesn't have to go away. A personality still happens. But when you identify with something bigger, with the big I that the little me appears in, then that person can just be like your favorite character in a series that you love and you follow and you appreciate, and you know, feel bad when they get into trouble and you cheer them when they do well, but it's not really who you really are. And so there's an okayness with the flaws and of that personality, but it doesn't have to disappear. It's a shift in identity. I'm this vast, clear, open okayness. The big I and the little me still has neuroses, still has problems, still has flaws, but I can love that little me for its flaws. So if you have a fear that that will go away, have no fear. It doesn't need to go away. I don't know if that's an adequate question, an adequate answer to the question, though.
I loved it. That is a great answer, and I think that you know, people will call it ego death. There's so many different labels for what it is, but that existed here. It really came from we'll call it ego attack or whatever. I mean, I use the word mind more than anything, not for any real preference, but that's just what happens. But there was this fear of the shirking my responsibilities as you know, as a father with kids, as someone that has a business that pays for other families. You know, that it was like, whoa, what if all of a sudden, you know, what if all of a sudden I don't care about this stuff anymore? And it was very, very real. Like it did a really good job of holding back holding back whatever. I mean, I was going to say acceptance or the floodgates from opening up for a number of weeks. It wasn't, it'd be more interesting and dramatic if I said I couldn't sleep and I was waking up in cold sweats, but it really wasn't it wasn't that interesting or dramatic. It just really was this, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can go, you know, fully in, but it was that fear of loss. Fear of loss of the self. And so it sounds silly, but I would do practice runs on the weekends. I would go, okay, we can go back, but this weekend we're going to try it out. Like this is all mind stuff. It's all just the mind and playing some other little thing, you know, to again, maintain its relevance. But I can't even say whether or not that was useful or helpful, but it just was another thing that happened. We don't have to go fully in. We'll just try it we'll be a weekend warrior of awakenness, and see how that goes over. But it was just more stuff. It was just more activities, more attempts to reconcile this thing that's truly never satisfied. And every attempt at satisfying it is just more food. It's another bone for it to chew on while it thinks of something else to sort of lob into existence, and see if you'll react to that as well. And it continues to try. I mean, I told you earlier, I'm in San Jose because we're getting COVID tests. I didn't mind the test. I heard horrible things, but I have 2 young kids. And so was this going to be traumatic? Like, the thoughts are like, can I jump? Am I going to jump in at the last minute and be like, do me twice, save, but it was, I just allowed those fearful thoughts to arise, and it didn't have anything to do here. They're happening because of this love. They're happening because of care, and there's no denying the existence of that love. There's no reason to deny the strength of that love. And so just feeling the fear and moving forward with that was the only order of the day. That's all that could have happened. And after all was said and done, we could try to use logic. I could be like, look, this is another thing that you put too much energy onto. And it wasn't, there was no sleep loss. There was no real nervousness. I was just a recognition of thoughts arising. Like, I hope everyone's okay. I hope that, no one has a bad time, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it.
But that's your nature. I mean, that's the nature of the body, mind, personality Noel. It's what it does. And it's okay. You don't have to never have fears. You don't have to never have emotions. In fact, it's absolutely the opposite. You have to drop all strategies not to have them and allow them to be there. And then you can be happy when you're sad. It's paradoxical. You can be happy when you're afraid. You can be happy when you're anxious. I mean, it's the grand paradox.
It really is. And that you're calling it happiness because that is what naturally arises.
But you could call it peace or joy.
Peace. Yeah, it just there is and it is. Again, the word surrender isn't something that's normally used, but in that case, it was like, well, this is what has to happen. That these are the rules that are being played, and we're not going to try some other nefarious ways of crossing the border with mules and but it's just that's what it was. And yet it's great because there's gratitude for the fearful thoughts arising as well. There's no running around afterwards and trying to say, see, you didn't need to be afraid. Let's try to not be afraid in the future.
Right. Well, I'm so glad you said that about gratitude for the fearful thoughts, because, all these fearful thoughts, we think they're our enemies, and therefore we have to get rid of them. But they were installed, maybe they were installed at a very, very young age to protect us. Maybe we don't need that protection anymore because situation's different and we've matured. But why did they want to protect us? Because they loved us. So even fear is a form of love. And
beautifully said.
Yeah.
Even fear is a form of love. I love that. Well, and it arose out of love in that way. It arose from wanting to, this interest in protecting.
Yeah, because we're vulnerable as children. We're so vulnerable, and we don't have the skills. We rely on someone else to protect us, and we tend to carry that much longer in our life than necessary. I like to call it a big dumb guard that doesn't know it's not needed anymore. Thank you so much for loving me and trying to protect me. take a break.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the vulnerabilities, the fear, all of that is what a beautiful part of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it also what helps make us compassionate. No, I've had, oh my God, all this pain in my life. Oh, another person is having similar pain. I know what they're feeling. That's compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
So true. Brian, I love talking to you, man.
I love talking to you too. It's so much
It's so
fun.
Yeah, it's so fun. So we have about 10 minutes left. If there are any other questions, please type them into chat. I see, yeah, you're getting some thanks for the talk. So thank you for that. Really quickly, and while we wait and see if any more come in, tell us anything that you have coming up, that you have going on regularly. We have links in the description that go to your website, and the book. And also, I think I tried to get everything on the event page, but tell us what you have. What's next?
Well, I have a monthly meetup called Awareness Games and Meditations, but I'm not terribly regular about it. I just sort of like say, oh, it's about time to do one. I haven't done one in a while. I better do one next week. And then I put it up, and I apologize to everybody. I haven't scheduled one yet, but I'll put one up soon. But there's you can go to Meetup and go to Awareness Games and, get on the list, and you'll get notified when the next meetup. And it's a Zoom meetup. Used to be live in person in an apartment in Manhattan. And now it's on Zoom because of lockdown. And it's free and it's fun. And then the other thing, and here's how, like, I'm just so imperfect and neurotic. I've written this second book, and I self-published the first one. I'm going to self-publish this one, and I have some other part-time jobs that I do and some clients that I work with, and so I've just sort of like been procrastinating actually getting that book out to the public, because it seems to have a life of its own. It seems to, when it's ready to happen, it happens, and then all of a sudden I do the work, and it seems effortless to do the work. So I'm sitting on it. It's ready to go. I'd love to have it out, but for some reason it's not coming out. I don't know why.
It'll happen.
But it's great. I love it. I love it. Not to, toot my own horn, but I really think it's a cool, fun book. I loved writing it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think you have people can sign up for a newsletter on your website. I know you're on Twitter, Instagram, you're on all the things.
Sure, and we do publish Awareness Explorers on a fixed schedule. Jonathan Robinson and I, every 2 weeks. We do stick to that.
There's the structure.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
This is a little bit of structure in my life.
Nothing wrong with that.
If something else is waiting for something from me, then I tend to do it. Otherwise, it's like,
That makes sense. That's actually a good way to be. Make yourself dependable that way.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Brian, it was so good talking to you. Anything else? Anything else you want to say before we stop today?
It's just, it's just so much fun and relaxed, and it's just such we both have a sense that there's something that's not a thing, that's nothing and everything that's discoverable, and this desire that help other people like play around and stumble into it themselves. And I love sharing that spirit with you.
Excellent. Yeah, me too. It's
and with Emerson too.
Yeah, Emerson gets to do a lot. He gets to talk to a lot of people about it. So it's he's really, really good at it. So I love that as well. Well, so I think we'll go ahead and stop now. We do these. We have something streaming, even if it's a pre-recorded video, every day at 12 p.m. Eastern. I think most of our weekdays are filled up with live streams. We have some retreats coming up. So just check nothing.fm. And that's it for us today. We have something started. The next one is, actually, we have a last minute ad. I think it's tomorrow, same time. there is a Jim Newman, Robert Saltzman live stream that's happening. So please tune in. Brian, Tom O'Connor, thank you. I'll just call you Brian. Brian, thank you
That's
so
good.
much for being on today. It's great talking to you, and I hope that we can do this again.
I hope so too. Great talking to you, Noel. And thanks everybody else too.
All right. I'll go ahead and stop the recording in